As a child, I spent the whole summer at the ranch in Texas with my grandparents. He repaired mills, instilled cattle, and just did nothing. After lunch, we watched soap operas. Be sure to Days of Our Life. Grandpa and grandparents were at the club of travelers on the Airstream trailer who traveled together in the USA and Canada. Once every few years, we joined them. We attached Airstream to the car and hit the road along with 300 other travelers. I enriched my grandparents with my grandparents and was really waiting for these trips. On one of the trips, I was about 10 years old. I was driving in a wide back seat. My grandfather led the car, and my grandmother sat next to him all the way, and I hated the smell. I constantly thought something under any pretext. I counted the consumption of gasoline, or failed the statistics of food costs at that time. By ear was one anti-tobacco campaign. I do not remember the details, but it said that each puff takes away several minutes of life. It seems that it was about 2 minutes for puff. I decided to make calculations for my grandmother. I calculated the number of cigarettes per day, the number of puffs on a cigarette, and so on. To my satisfaction, having received the result, I put my head forward between the seats, slapped my grandmother on the shoulder, and proudly exclaimed, 2 minutes for a puff. Cigarettes took you from you for more than 9 years of life. I remember very well what happened next. I remember that I did not expect this. I thought that they would praise me for the mind and calculation skills. Jeff, you're so smart. Wow, how you had to work. Calculate the number of minutes a year, divide, but something else happened. My grandmother suddenly burst into tears. I sat in the back seat and did not know what to do, and she cried. Grandfather first silently and then turned to the side of the road and stopped. He got out of the car, walked around it, opened my door, and called for him. Am I guilty? My grandfather was a very smart and calm person. I have never heard a rude word from him. It seemed to me, now I will hear. Or maybe he will ask me to return to the car and apologize to my grandmother. This has never happened between me grandparents, and I could not imagine what the consequences would be. We stopped at the trailer. Grandfather looked at me, and after a moment of pause, gently and quietly said, "Once you will understand that it is more difficult to be kind than smart." I want to talk about the difference between talent and decision today. The mind is a kind of talent, and kindness is a solution. Talent is easy, it just eats. And the solution may be difficult. Your talent can knock you out of the way. If you do not be on the check, lose your vigilance, and maybe you will be mistaken in the solution. The mind will come in handy on a trip around the wonderful world. We are hardworking people. We ourselves will create miracles. We will learn to get pure energy in large quantities. The atom behind the atom will create a mechanism penetrating through the wall of the cell in order to subordinate it. Jules Verne, Mark Twain, Galileo, and Newton, all inquisitive historical personalities, would like to live right now. Like civilization, we will have as many talents together as your individual abilities will compose together. How do you apply your talent? What will you be proud of? Talent or solutions? I planned to create Amazon 16 years ago. I found out then that every year the network is used 2,300% more actively. I could not imagine something to develop so quickly. I was inspired by the idea of creating an online store with millions of books that simply could not exist in the real world. I was 30 years old then, and as a year I got married, I told my wife that I want to leave work and do a crazy project, which is unlikely to burn out like most startups, and that I don't know what will happen next to Mackenzie told me that, as a child I was a garage inventor. I invented an automatic device for closing the gate of tires with cement, a solar plate of a dubious structure from an umbrella and aluminum foil, alarm from my brother and sister from a pan. I wanted to invent, and Mackenzie wanted me to follow the vocation. I worked for a financial company in New York, was surrounded by very smart people, and admired my boss. I came to him and said that I wanted to open a book for the sale of books on the internet. He called me for a walk to the Central Park, listened, and then said, "It sounds good, but it would sound even better if you had no excellent work to me." It seemed logical to me. and he convinced me to think for a couple of days before solving the choice was really difficult, but in the end I still decided that I needed it. Try. I was not afraid to regret an unsuccessful attempt. I was afraid to regret that I did not dare to try. After thinking about everything, I chose a slippery path, succumbed to my passion, and I am proud of my decision. How will you manage your talent? What decisions? Will you swim with the flow or follow your passion? Find a dogmas or will you find your way? Choose security or service to other people and adventures? Drink under critics? Save your beliefs? Will you persist in your mistakes or recognize them? If you fall in love, will you act or end? What do you choose, peace or a drop of recklessness? In difficult times, give up or turn out? Who will you be, cynics or creators? What are you smart at someone else's expense or kind? I will take a chance to assume, after 60 years in the quiet minutes of thought, when you will retell your personal life story, the shortest and most significant part of this story will be the decisions that you made. We are the decisions made by us. Create your great story. Friends, subscribe if you like this kind of content.